And I get why that is. You spend so much time watching hashtag misandry talk videos on TikTok that's going to train your brain to react with hostility and malice when you see or hear somebody who looks and sounds like the culturally prescribed description of a man. So you know how when the trailer for the Paul Feig Ghostbusters movie was released, MRAs and misogynists kicked up such a fuss about it that anyone who had any legitimate criticisms about how lousy the trailer looked,
the power of pain compels you!
automatically also got lumped in with those guys? That's basically what's going to happen to you if you raise any issue with the culture of rampant misandry that's being normalized on TikTok. Now don't get me wrong, the MRAs who throw the word misandry around all willy-nilly are dumb as fuck. They'll accuse women of being misandrists simply for advocating for feminism. Most of the time, they won't even say the word misandry right. They'll tell a woman that she sounds misandric, or what she's saying reeks of misandrism. And I'm just like, what? Those aren't words. These guys have no fucking idea what they're talking about. And the consequences of this are that people like me, non-binary people who were assigned male at birth, who would like to raise issue to how misandry erases our identities, we just get called MRAs when we do that. The constant stream of short-form content that TikTok offers has been proven to shorten people's attention spans, and in my experience, it also shortens people's empathy spans. Which makes sense that such a culture would thrive on TikTok, just like it thrived on Tumblr before it, because TikTok is specifically tailored to socially reward people and encourage people to be dumb and mean. There is a very active TERF indoctrination pipeline on TikTok that operates like the alt-right pipeline.
There are definitely some similarities between how TERFs and the alt-right recruit new members. They operate mostly online and target young, impressionable teens who are just getting into politics. They rely on people's existing prejudice and ignorance that they then use as a building block to make them more hateful. They paint themselves as the real freedom fighters that are representing the silent majority that are too afraid to speak up because of the liberals. Basically, they try to coax you in by saying, you already believe what we believe in, you're just too afraid to admit it.
Whereas the alt-right pipeline draws young men and boys in with edgy, insensitive humor that's meant to trigger the libs. The TERF pipeline draws women and girls in with, misandry, making misandry funny and cool and quirky. The thing about TikTok is that it does not encourage or reward substance or nuance. It's all about aesthetic and vibes.
The more I read Book Talk books, the more I find myself more convinced of this. Book Talk doesn't want to read books. Book Talk want to read tropes. And if that's the case, may I suggest you guys stick with fan fiction?
Feminism thrives on substantive discussions and nuanced observations of the inner workings of patriarchy. That type of content is only going to go so far on TikTok. Quick, bite-sized content that, without any nuance, just antagonizes men and boys, to the amusement of women and girls who are frustrated with having to deal with living under patriarchy, that's going to go much, much farther. And it ain't going to teach anyone shit, but it will radicalize them into the TERF ideology.
Another way that TERFs will coax new young feminists to their side is by appealing to their misandry. And by misandry, I mean reactive anger towards men's misogyny, not a structural institution akin to misogyny. When young girls first encounter feminism and learn more about the ways in which men harm women, they become angry, and rightfully so. While mainstream feminism will dismiss that anger and make excuses for men's behavior, TERFs will welcome it and appeal to it. But TERFs will then start to introduce a more insidious anger, one that relies on bioessentialism, that men are born evil, that they're irredeemable, that males are biologically oppressive. See where that goes? Anger is a valid response to oppression, and new feminists especially will feel that anger intensely, but we can't let it lead us down the wrong road.
Young men and boys aren't drawn into the alt-right pipeline because the arguments of the alt-right appeal to them on an intellectual level. Often they're drawn in because they find community and camaraderie amongst this community that's centered around opposing progressive values and triggering the libs.
This is a constant repetition of the left's arguments for the purpose of mockery. And for Gabe, it starts to replace any engagement with progressive media directly. He soon knows the left only through caricature. It also trains him, if he does directly engage, to approach the left with the same combative stance as his role models.
Likewise, women and girls aren't drawn to the TERF pipeline because feminist theory leads them to that conclusion. They're drawn to it because they find camaraderie and like-mindedness in this community that centers around anti-male sentiment that can offer a superficial catharsis for having to deal with being a misogyny-affected person living under patriarchy. The Druafuelification of feminism, basically. That's what both the alt-right pipeline and the TERF pipeline offer to the people that they're drawing into their folds. 1, a sense of being edgy and countercultural, 2, a community, and 3, an enemy. And the enemy can't be an inhuman structural institution like patriarchy. No, the enemy's got to be someone you can see, somebody with a face. Patriarchy doesn't have a face. Men do. All misandrists are TERFs, at least functionally, if not intentionally. And don't hit me with that, well, I'm a misandrist and I'm not a TERF. I recognize that trans women are women. Because, first of all, ew, self-identifying as a misandrist is cringe. And second of all, affirming MTF trans women doesn't cut it. Well, I also recognize that trans men are men and hate them too. And I'm sure they appreciate that. But that still leaves non-binary people, particularly non-binary people who were assigned male at birth, without any consideration. There's this, saying amongst the NB community that people tend to think that non-binary just means woman light, meaning that it's only non-binary people who are assigned female at birth, i.e. non-binary people who look and sound like women, they're the only ones whose identity as non-binary is considered valid. When it comes to non-binary people who are assigned male at birth, like me, our identities aren't valid. We don't get to be not men.
Hey everybody. I'm Rowan, but my friends call me Spoon sometimes, so you can call me that. Man.
And I get why that is. You spend so much time watching #Misandry Talk videos on TikTok that's going to train your brain to react with hostility and malice when you see or hear somebody who looks and sounds like the culturally prescribed description of a man, even if that person is not a man. And if you are willing to exclude non-binary AMABs from your misandry, then you've already passed the point where it makes any sense to persist in being a misandrist. If you were to tell me, hey, I'm a misandrist, I hate all men, but don't sweat it, that doesn't include you because I know you're non-binary, I would still seriously doubt your sincerity and your understanding of gender in the first place. The very existence of non-binary people is a testament to how gender is a made-up social construct. Once you've mentally reached the point where you have accepted that gender is a made-up social construct, it doesn't make any sense to persist in gender-based misanthropy. Being non-binary, I don't have the luxury of drawing a distinction between misandry and transphobia. They're melded together. And that makes it very easy to spot a TERF when they're being crypto. If they were to openly hate on trans women, that they would immediately out themselves as a TERF. But openly hating on men? Girl, this is TikTok. It would be weird if you didn't. See, the thing is, misandry is the foundation that trans misogyny is built on. The reason they hate trans women so much is because they don't see them as women, they see them as men. And they really fucking hate men.
Listen to me when I tell you that they're not gonna listen to you. They don't listen to anybody, but they especially don't listen to men. That's because they genuinely hate them. Not in a way that's frustrated with privileged misogynist men, oppressed groups reacting to their oppressors, but in a truly reactionary way. They think that high rates of male unaliving are good. They have no sense of solidarity with other oppressed groups, and that includes men. There's no nuance. To them, all men are the oppressors of all women.
The rampant culture of romanticizing and glorifying misandry on TikTok has been an absolute godsend for TERFs. It offers them plausible deniability for actually being TERFs, as well as a means of recruiting frustrated young women and girls into their ideology. So when you raise issue with people cultivating an online culture that promotes misandry, people who are ingrained in that culture will usually push back by saying, well, what about misogyny, huh? Misogyny is so much worse than misandry. Misogyny kills women, but misandry just hurts men's feelings. And first of all, try telling the women who cannot access domestic abuse shelters because those shelters will not allow them to bring their male children with them that misandry doesn't have any adverse effects on anyone. Second of all, how misandry compares to misogyny is entirely besides the point. In either case, they are both forms of gender-based misanthropy, which only serves to reinforce gender essentialism, which only serves to reinforce transphobia. The only reason we don't focus on that aspect of it when we talk about misogyny is because that's the least of the issues when it comes to misogyny. But that doesn't mean that there are no issues when it comes to misandry.
Why should I be forced to satisfy